some snow, but that's okay. So I'll take it. It's the sun's out. So I am Tracy Henn. I'm the president-elect of Indiana CEC. And I'm very excited to introduce two of my colleagues tonight who are going to be speaking to us on educator wellness. So we have Victoria Cornell. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist and works as a mental health therapist at Wawasee High School. She has been an MHT for 19 and a half years. Jennifer Mitchell is a licensed mental health counselor and works as a mental health therapist at Wawasee Middle School and Syracuse Elementary. So she gets a little bit of both worlds. And she has been an MHT for 17 years, 12 in the school setting. So hopefully you got the email from Todd about some things they wanted you to have at hand. And I'm just going to turn it over to them. Looks like somebody managing the day-to-day obstacles without getting overwhelmed. I'm with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like I Downs. I don't know your first name, but yes, it's that time of year, which is why this webinar is perfect. So remember that it is being recorded. We will send it out and it will be on our YouTube channel. So if you want to rewatch it or share it with colleagues, feel free to do that. All right, Jen and Victoria, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Yeah, thank you. Victoria and I are going to kind of tag team this evening as we share some of our journey and things that we have learned about self-care. Keep putting some thoughts in that chat box. Tracy's going to keep a little bit of track. Typically what people say and what we feel, some barriers to self-care are time. Not enough time. Where do I build that in? My schedule is already so full. Some things are like guilt. I feel really guilty. I have too many people to take care of. Maybe even sometimes a hard time changing our habits and sometimes trying and then giving up. So those are some of the barriers that we typically hear. And we're going to address some of those as we go through our evening tonight. So Victoria, you want to share your journey?
Sure. So again, my name is Victoria Cornell and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. And when I started back in the schools about 19 and a half years ago now, life was very different. And, you know, I was very motivated and just wanted to do a good job. And so I was spending 12, 13 hours a day at school trying to make sure that I stayed on top of things and continued to do that for several years. And over the last few years, just found that I was getting in a place that I was getting burned out. And, you know, the kids' situations are getting harder. They're coming in with a lot more than what they used to come in with. And so I was just not taking care of myself. And it was even at that point that I was questioning, can I continue to do this? Because I just don't have the energy and the motivation. And so really just realized, you know, kind of taking that step back and realizing I have to take care of myself, because if I don't take care of myself, then I am not going to be able to continue to do this. And just as Jen had mentioned earlier, sometimes there is that struggle of feeling like I'm being selfish if I say no to something, or I'm being selfish if I take time to take care of myself, or even if I take a day off. And so over the last several years, I've made lots of changes in terms of self-care because I do want to do this for the long term. And this is something I am passionate about. And if I don't take care of myself, then I know I'm not going to be able to do that. So Jen and I have created this. We did a training this summer with staff and tweaked it a little bit for tonight. And so we just wanted to share kind of our why and just our passion in terms of sharing this information with you all.
Absolutely. I think that part of your story, Victoria, where you say you really came to terms with, if I don't do something, if I don't change something about how I'm caring for myself, I will not have the capacity to keep doing what I love to do. And I think that really rings true with this quote that we have up here. So whether you and I and a few others will renew the world someday remains to be seen, but within ourselves, we must renew it each day. And so I think that really speaks to, this is really important work, just like the work that we have as special educators in the students that we serve. We are always giving. That's important work. It's also really important work that we're renewing ourselves on the inside so that we can expand our capacity to continue to give. When I think about special education and what we do as mental health therapists, we're helping the kids in special ed. So that's what Victoria and I do in our district. And when I think about that, I think like, you know, that triangle, like we love triangles in education, right? Like we have those triangles. So we're tier 3, like, right? Special ed is tier 3 interventions, the most intensive interventions with the most intensive kids. And we are also juggling special ed, colleagues, general ed, teachers, families, and kids, and all administrators, and the law, and the paperwork we have to wrestle with. So there's a lot that we are pouring into, and it is vital and essential that we also get some tier 3 interventions. And we're responsible for doing that ourselves.
Okay, so for tonight, we are going to be focusing on self-awareness and developing a self-care plan. And so we are going to be incorporating throughout the training just some different strategies that we would like you to try out. And maybe you'll find that they are things that are calming and just relaxing for your nervous system. And so you can add them to your toolbox and your self-care plan. And just as we're starting out, I want to make sure that, you know, you're aware that sometimes you might try something and it might not be relaxing or calming for you. And if that is the case, that is fine. Just go ahead and stop what you're doing and take some time to just tend to your needs and do whatever you may need to do in that moment. So at any point, if something isn't comfortable for you or it doesn't feel calming and relaxing, just go ahead and stop and do what you need to do so that you can feel comfortable and relaxed. So at this point, we're going to do our first activity, and I will explain it really quickly, and then we will practice it. So for this one, you're going to take your right hand and put it on your left shoulder, and your left hand wraps around and it goes on your rib cage. And we'll breathe in through our noses to the count of 4, and then breathe out of our mouths to the count of 6. And as you do that, just focus on your breath. And we're going to do that 3 times, and then we are going to switch to the other side. Okay, so we're going to breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. One more time, breathe in and breathe out. And just go ahead and you can lower your arms, and then you are going to switch. So put your left hand up on your right shoulder and your right hand down on your rib cage. And we're going to repeat that. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. One more time, breathe in and breathe out. Okay, and one other thing that I forgot to mention, as we're doing this, we love to see your faces on the camera, but as we're doing these relaxing activities or calming activities, if you want to turn your camera off and maybe just close your eyes so that you can really relax and just focus on what you're doing, you are welcome to do that. Okay, towards the end, we're going to process a little bit about how some of those calming strategies felt for you. But for now, Jen is going to discuss the professional quality of life scale.
Yes. So just take a moment as I get to this page and think about your level of satisfaction in your professional life. Okay, so just think about that, where you're at right now. This professional quality of life scale is a great tool. It gives you a snapshot. It's really meant to evaluate like in the last 30 days. So maybe something good to do periodically. And this will be available. We have it in our resources on our slides, but just kind of take a look at perusing some of these statements and just see like, what would you answer? I feel worn out because of my work as a helper. I feel overwhelmed. I say that one a lot. I believe I can make a difference through my work. I'm proud of what I can do, or I feel bogged down. So really easy, quick assessment. And as you move through this, it kind of rate your responses on compassion, satisfaction, burnout, and then secondary traumatic stress. And if you think about compassion, satisfaction, that just means the giving that I do, I feel satisfied with. I feel purposeful in my work. That's probably a really good indication that as far as self-care goes, you're doing pretty good. You've probably got some good systems going on. And so good for you. Keep that up. And you would need to maybe just think about what else can I build in? How can I diversify that for myself? If you're doing a little slippery slope there to burnout, if you land in this burnout section, it just might be an alert to you, like a cue. Oh gosh, check engine light is coming on. I might need to pay some closer attention to some things in my life and build in some extra supports. Secondary traumatic stress really speaks to, I am feeling traumatized by some of the things that are happening in my helping life. And so those are things that is like, don't pass go, stop here and get some help. Talk to somebody about it, or you won't be able to continue on. It will really affect your work. And then this last page kind of puts in a little categories, like how rated are those things for you. So I think this is really a great tool for you to kind of get a picture of where you are. We can't know where we're going to go if we don't know where we're at. So this gives you a good way to gauge that for yourself. We spend a lot of our time and energy giving. And so, like I said before, we need to know what we can do to expand our capacity to keep doing that. And I'm going to attempt, oh gosh, to go back to, how do I do this? I'm sorry. Uh-oh. Oh dear. Okay. Help. How do I go back?
Can you see the tabs at the top of your screen?
Well, they're covered up by the
Okay.
Zoom.
I can see self-care training if you're going back to the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Up higher above all that.
Higher. Oh.
Yep.
Here.
Go to the left. Yep. And then keep going. Keep going. Go up a little bit. A little more. Click.
Oh, I just clicked on participants. Oh, I can see everyone. That's great. Oh my gosh, I'm embarrassed for myself. Okay.
You're fine. You're totally fine.
How can if I could just move. Oh.
Can you close the window out that you're on? I'm going to put everything down. Nope, you're about to close everything down, I think.
Yeah, that's scary. Don't do that. Can I move this down? Oh, wait.
It looks like you were right about to click on the self-care.
Yeah. Yeah, right there.
This,
Oh, that's your email.
no.
Your email.
Sorry.
Go back to the right.
Yeah.
I think. There you go.
There. There.
Got it. Yay.
Oh my gosh, I'm beet red. Ah, okay.
Great.
We made it together.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for your support. I appreciate it. You gave me some tier 3 interventions there. Okay. All right. So self-awareness. Look at this little quote here, teacher confessional, and just think about, where do you think this person might have been on that professional quality of satisfaction of life scale? So not that we haven't all said something like, I'm really frustrated with this kid, or they really get under my skin, but that's a cue, right? So this is probably like, this person is saying, I was so ashamed that I felt that way, that I had that thought. Well, that's a cue. That's a cue that there's something going on inside, and I need to pay attention, because I'm not acting in the way that I want to act as a person. So as we go through this evening, we're going to approach self-care with self-awareness, and we're going to be aware of things in a triangle. Ta-da! I came up with a little triangle. This is my own little creation, and I tried to be educational. So really simple, body, mind, behavior. Kind of, it doesn't really stand for anything else. There's no really fun acronym to go with it, but body, mind, behavior is really what we're going to focus on. So we're going to think about, in your notes, or if you're taking notes, or wherever you are, just maybe jot down some of those cues that you have in the different areas of your life. When your body is giving you cues that you are not okay, you might be getting headaches, you might not be sleeping very well, you might feel dizzy sometimes, you might feel like your brain is in a fog, or that it's really hard to think. Mind cues, those things that tell us we're not doing so well. I feel like some of those things are really getting in a rut of negative thinking, unproductive venting that we might do, just really being stuck in everything's bad, that kind of thing. Maybe not being able to slow your thoughts down, or having racing thoughts, or feeling like everything is urgent. That's one for me. When I start to feel like everything's an emergency, I know, I'm a little overwhelmed. Those behavior cues, some of those might be drinking too much, or overeating. It might be binge watching shows and then feeling really bad about that. It could be becoming really controlling and micromanaging our families or people in our lives. Could be things like being really snappy, and maybe having disruptions in our relationships. Those are some cues. So just take a little bit of time and think about what those cues are for you, because this is the beginning of that plan, right? Like I said, we don't know where we're going unless we know where we are. And Victoria is going to dive into the cause of burnout, that slippery slope, which is stress.
Okay, so on this slide, you can see some of the impact of chronic stress and what can happen to us. And as we look at stress, it's important to recognize that stress is a physical response that travels throughout our entire body. Stress isn't necessarily a bad thing. Some level of stress gets us motivated, and it helps us to get up in the morning, and it helps us to take the necessary steps to study for a test, or in my case, to get my taxes done that I really need to get done. And so it can help to motivate us to do the things that we need to do. However, when stress is ongoing and we're not doing the things that we need to do in order to manage that stress, that's when problems can come along. And so there's a book that I would recommend. It's called The Body Keeps the Score. And in this book, Dr. Vander Kolk talks about how the body stores stress and trauma, even though often we're not aware of the stress that we're experiencing, or we might not have even been aware of the trauma that we experienced, especially if it happened when we were really young. And so the body will store it and it will present it in various ways. So as Jen had mentioned earlier, talking about the body, mind, and behavior cues, we just need to increase that awareness and be more in tune with our body and what our bodies are telling us. So by listening to our bodies and taking those necessary steps to manage the stress and engaging in self-care, we can improve our physical as well as our mental health. When we're not taking care of ourselves and doing what we can to control our stress, it can lead to chronic stress. And the chronic stress is really what can do the long-term damage. And so again, looking back to this slide, you'll notice lots of different things. It could be difficulty concentrating, difficulty recalling words that you've known forever, but it's just hard to think of the word in that moment. Sleep interruptions, feeling fatigue, even though you may have gotten a good night's sleep or what you felt like was a good night's sleep, you're still really tired. And then on the other side, high blood pressure, plaque buildup in the arteries, which can lead to heart attack and stroke, weight gain, irritable bowel syndrome. There's so many health conditions that we can have some control over if we are managing our stress and doing what we can do in order to mitigate the effects of that. So it's important to keep in mind that stress accumulates. And so we're going to think of it like a cup of water here. And with every little stressor, a little more water is added. So imagine in the morning, your alarm doesn't go up and so you wake up late. We're going to add some water to the cup. And then you go to get dressed and your clothes just don't fit right and you can't find an outfit to wear. So we add a little more stress to the cup. And then we are driving to school and a deer runs out in front of us. More stress is added. And then we get to school, we go and get our coffee and we feel like things are going to go well. And we're walking back to our classroom and we spill the coffee. And a little more stress. And then we open our email and our administrator lets us know that they would like to have a meeting with us. And then we realize we have an IEP meeting tomorrow and haven't even started the paperwork. We're going to add a lot more stress on that one. Okay. And then we realize, oh my gosh, my son doesn't have any money in his lunch account and he's in another district and he's not going to be able to eat lunch today. And we just add a little more stress. And now it's not even 8 o'clock and my cup is already almost full from stresses that for the most part seem to be really little, but they really add up really quickly. And that's the thing that, sometimes we feel like, I don't know why I'm stressed because I really don't have anything to be stressed about, but we forget about all those little things can add up. And so again, that's why it's so important that we're doing things to take care of ourselves and to essentially be able to empty the cup back out of the water so that we can increase our capacity to deal with some of those even bigger stressors that come up during our school day or just at any time. So we are going to, now that we looked at the impact of chronic stress, we are going to look at the brain and how the brain is impacted. And so as we look at the brain and its impacts on stress, here's a very simplified, but also important explanation from Conscious Discipline. And it really looks at the brain state in 3 different brain states. And if you'll notice there in the red, they have the survival brain state, and then the blue is the emotional brain state, and the green, and there's actually 2 different colors of green there, but that's the executive brain state. And as you look at the picture down towards the bottom, you'll see the brain stem, which is in red, and then the limbic area, which is in blue. And those work together to really regulate arousal and emotions and the way that we have our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. And so then if you move up a little bit, that lighter color of green is what we would call the cortex. And this is higher on the brain, and it really allows us to think and to reason and to perceive really the outside world. And our perception is always impacted by experiences and what has happened to us. And so that's why when we look at situations, one person's perception can be very different than another because of those experiences that we've had. And so the cortex is really responsible in helping with that. And then the prefrontal cortex, if you look at the front of the brain there, and it's just a little bit darker green, the prefrontal cortex is responsible for regulating the subcortical areas, which include that brainstem and the limbic system. And when we're stressed or when we're tired and we're not feeling well, and then something little can happen or someone can push our buttons, that can cause the prefrontal cortex to go offline. And so when that happens, we can lose our flexible thinking, we can lose our moral compass, we lose problem solving and flexibility, and that's when we can respond or react in ways that we wouldn't typically respond in. And so, that can be scary for the individuals and especially the students who are around us, but it can also cause more stress and sometimes even embarrassment. As we then later calm down and we reflect on that and we're like, oh my gosh, I don't know why I did that. I would never, typically say that, or I would never typically do that. But if we understand the brain and how the brain responds when we are under stress or emotions are really high, we can understand that that isn't typically how we would respond, but we just lost that, the prefrontal cortex there in that moment. So that's another reason why self-awareness is so important, is because when we recognize that our emotions are rising and they're increasing in intensity, then that is a clue for us to be able to say, I need to do something in this moment to manage that stress, to manage those emotions. And maybe it's something as simple as just taking several deep breaths right there in that moment. Or maybe it's, hey, I need to tag out for a minute and I need to get my administrator to step in for a minute while I go take a walk, or maybe just get a quick drink of water so that I can get myself calmed back down and composed, and so that I can go back in up in that executive state and to be able to, respond in the way that I would be wanting to respond. And so if you're not familiar with the conscious discipline model, a quick overview would be down there in the survival mode, which is the red. Our brain and our nervous system is designed to only do one thing in that moment. When we're in survival mode, we are designed to just survive. So we are not trying to learn new information in that moment. We're not being creative in that moment. Our brain and our body is taking all of the energy it has to simply survive that moment. And so the main goal or the main need in survival state is safety. And so the brain really asks, am I safe? And it's going to do whatever it can to get that need of safety met. In the emotional state, we're feeling all of the feels. And so we might be having those big emotions and we might be responding more out of emotions rather than logic, because again, in that state, especially if the prefrontal cortex has gone offline, we're not thinking rationally and we're not thinking clearly. And so in the emotional state, we need that calm reassurance. And so we need to provide this for ourselves, potentially through positive self-talk, especially until we can connect with another adult and be able to maybe talk through some situations. We need regulation strategies to get ourselves, to get that prefrontal cortex back online. And again, this is another good reason to incorporate mindfulness and breathing throughout the day, and potentially even doing that with your students in the classroom so that they can be ready to learn and ready to go. In the emotional state, the brain is asking, am I loved and am I connected? So our need in this state is really connection with others. And so then the executive state, which is the green, is ultimately where we are doing life. At this state, we are regulated and we're functioning at an optimal level. We're able to problem solve. We're able to be flexible thinkers. We're able to be creative. We can engage and use our conflict management skills. We can teach and just learn. And so the brain when we're in the executive state, is asking, what can I learn? And our need here is really to problem solve and to learn and to grow. So one thing to think about is, how do we recognize when we're in each of these states? So some things to consider, and just maybe take some notes for yourself, again, to increase some of that self-awareness. Think about, what does your voice tone sound like when you're in the survival state? And maybe you're not even talking when you're in survival state. Maybe you're just quiet, not saying anything. But if you were to say something, what does your voice tone sound like? And then I also want you to think about, how does your body feel when you're in survival state? Maybe you feel antsy and you can't sit still. Or maybe you feel exhausted and you want to just sleep, and maybe sleeping more than you normally sleep because you're in that shutdown. And then tantrums can also happen in survival state. What might your tantrums as an adult look like? Like, it's easy to see in our kids a lot of times when they're in survival state, and what their tantrums look like, but what do ours as adults look like? And maybe in the survival state, you go into flight mode and you're just running away and not able to do the things that you would typically do, and you're not ready to face those things that seem really big and seem really scary. So then think about next the emotional state. What does your tone of voice sound like in the emotional state? And is it different than the survival state? And then the same thing, how does your body feel when you're in the emotional state? Maybe shoulders are tense and tight. Maybe you experience some stomach aches or headaches. And then the executive state. So when we are in that executive state and we're regulated and everything is kind of coming together, what does your tone of voice sound like here? I find myself humming a lot when I'm in the executive state and kind of bouncing around a little bit. Like, I have a little more pep in my step. I have a little more of that energy. Like, it's what I would say is more of a positive energy. I might feel more motivated. Think about, how does your body feel? And how does your work production maybe change when you're in the executive state versus when you're in the emotional state or when you're in the survival state? So ultimately, it is important that we're taking time to manage our stress on a daily basis, but also frequently throughout the day. So it's important to recognize we do have different needs at those different states. Again, I need to feel safe when I'm in that survival state. So thinking about, who do I feel safe with? Who are my anchors? Or what can help me to feel safe when I'm in the survival state? Who can I go to? Hopefully you have your item with you that brings about that sense of calm and relaxation. How can you incorporate that into your day? Maybe it's at school, or maybe it's when you get home each evening. How can you incorporate that to just help you feel calm and relaxed? And maybe you have different items in different places. Maybe you have some items at school that help you to feel that sense of calm and relaxation, and you have some additional items at home.
Victoria, we had a couple of comments in the chat, so I wanted to point those out to you. Maria said that her ears will get hot and red. She'll be very emotional, cry easily. She gets super quiet. And then Tammy said she once cried for 20 minutes in front of a pile of laundry.
Oh,
So,
I can relate.
so can I.
And it's, it's good that we have that cry and just kind of let it out, because I always share with people, like, that crying is kind of like that pressure gauge. Like, everything just kind of builds up, and if we don't just allow ourselves that opportunity to just cry and get it all out, it tends to just keep building. So yeah. And those can be hard sometimes. Or again, if you're at school and you feel that and you're in that state, it's hard sometimes to find somebody to be able to help you and maybe be able to go somewhere and just kind of cry and get it all out. But it's important to do that. And that's also part of that self-care, is just allowing yourself to do what you need to do kind of in that moment. Okay.
Are we moving on? Or are you gonna do the,
I think we can, I don't even know what time it is.
it's 6:06.
Okay, we'll do this activity really quickly. So one of the things that is, again, important to keep in mind is that our brains are supercomputers, essentially, and there's so much still about them that we don't even know. And so one of the things that can happen with our brain, and I don't want you to do this, but if I were to tell you to think about the scariest situation that you've ever been in and try to imagine every single detail, again, do not do this. But if you were to imagine every single detail, your brain, just by picturing all those details and imagining all of those things, can actually shift your body and your nervous system into that fight, flight, or freeze response. So your heart rate would change, your breathing would change. And so you wouldn't even have to physically be in that situation, but that's how powerful our brains are. And the opposite is also true, in that we can be in a stressful situation, but if we can shift our minds to think about a situation that's nice and calm and relaxing, and really imagine all of the details in that situation, we can also cause our body and the nervous system to shift into what we would call rest and digest, or the parasympathetic nervous system. So we're just going to take a minute or two here and practice this. So again, if you want to turn your cameras off, you can. But I would just want you to go ahead and close your eyes and imagine a place that feels really safe and really calm for you. And imagine as many details as possible in this place. So while you're in that place, look around and see all of the colors that are around you, and just all of the things that are around you. And then focus in and imagine the sounds that you can hear that are relaxing and calm. It might be birds singing, or it might be leaves rustling, or it might even be the crackling of a cozy fire. And then next, what can you feel in your relaxing place? Maybe it's the warmth of the sunshine. Maybe there's a gentle breeze that's blowing. And then next, we're going to move on to what you can smell here. And maybe it's the scent after a rain as you're walking through the woods. Or maybe it's just the scent of your coffee that you have sitting in front of you. And now I just want you to breathe that scent in deeply. And then hold on to that scent. And then take one more breath here. And then when you're ready, open your eyes and return to the room and here in this space. And if you would like, go ahead and turn your cameras back on. And so give us a thumbs up in the chat if that was something that was relaxing for your mind and your nervous system. Again, this is something that you can do in the evenings. It's something that you could do, during prep, or maybe just as you're getting ready to start your day, or maybe at the end of the day or during lunch. But again, it's something that's important to incorporate and just have as part of your self-care plan, if that is something that feels calming and relaxing to you. Okay, so next, monitoring stress levels and increasing awareness is important. And so as we are moving forward, we're going to give you some tools that you could use. And this one is the taking your stress temperature. And this one came from What About You, which is a workbook for those who work with others, and it's free. And if anybody would be interested in that, I can put that link in the website, but there's several different tools in there. But I just kind of like this one because, again, as we go through our week, if we are monitoring our stress levels, we might find that certain days of the week are a little more stressful than others. And so when we can see that, we can provide a little more self-care, or we can look at maybe what's providing that additional stress, and maybe we can change some things around in our schedule, or maybe there's even some things that we decide that we just want to take out of our schedule completely because we don't need that additional stress. Okay. And then we might need to like go a little quicker through these next couple of ones.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one is another tool that you can use, and it's just, kind of like a thermometer, so to speak. And if you were to think back at the beginning of the school year, at this chart, where would you say you were? Like right at the beginning of the school year, were you in thriving where, you're kind of thinking, I got this, or maybe surviving where something just wasn't right, but you were still able to kind of go along? Maybe you were in the struggling where I can't keep this up, or in crisis, I can't survive this. Where would you say you were at the beginning of the year? And where would you say you are now? And has it changed? So and when you're thinking about that and looking down through some of the descriptions for that, it's important to recognize there's going to be some fluctuations even throughout the day. And so I might start out in the green, and then I might move into the yellow, and then there might be a point in the day where I'm in that orange, and then I go back to the yellow, and I go back to the green, and just kind of back and forth. And that's all pretty normal. What is important to recognize, if you get up into the struggling and into the crisis, and especially if you're staying there, that's definitely when you need to be reaching out and getting some additional help. And we are going to share some additional resources for that here as we get towards the end. But again, monitoring, where are you, and kind of maybe where are you consistently, and what, if you're in the green consistently, that's great. If you're in the yellow, the orange, or definitely in the red, you need to be doing some other things to make sure that we're getting you back down into the green.
All right, so now we're going to start building in our self-care plan. We've got a lot of resources that we gave you to kind of check your temperature. Where am I at? Figuring out if my check engine light is about to come on. I know if I don't change my oil regularly, my engine doesn't sound very good, and I can kind of tell. And if I let it go too long, it's something bad's going to happen. So we have some of those in place for you. And this is where we're going to talk about either some remedies, like if you're in the orange or the red, or some continued preventative strategies for you to build in. And the key here is life-giving. So like Victoria said, this isn't just fluff. This is, sometimes I think we think of self-care and we're like, oh, it's just these little things we do. And in some ways that's true, which is kind of helps address one of those barriers that we talked about in the beginning of not enough time, or I feel guilty. So we know now these are life-giving things. And additionally, we're not doing a major house restoration. Like, we're not tearing everything down and then have to rebuild everything. What we're talking about is habits. And habits are built with small shifts. Just a little shift. If you're driving down the road and you're like in a 2-lane highway and you veer like a little bit into the left lane, you don't do like a major like 180 turn, because that would lead to some disaster, right? You do a little shift of your steering wheel, and that's what we're talking about. Small shifts in daily doses. So I love alliteration. So small shifts, daily doses. And that's kind of a good way to think about how we're going to build in some of these things into our life. So we're going to think about it just like that triangle, the BMB, body, mind, behaviors. So take a look at these healthy habits for your body. Number one is breathing, because we know, like Victoria said, that's like the fastest way to that survival state and to nurture your nervous system to get it calmed down. Those mindful moments are really important, and research-based. So a lot of people think that mindfulness is just a buzzword. It's actually research-based, and has a lot of meat behind it to tell us that it helps calm our nervous systems. Laughing, like that's a big thing. One of the things Victoria and some of our other colleagues were on a group chat, and we are just like sending the memes, and sometimes they just make me laugh so hard that I tear up, and most of the time I just feel really encouraged. So that's good. So go through here and just start marking down the ones like, this is the one I want to challenge myself to start to build in, because some of these might be easy and some of them might be a little harder, but have a higher payoff for you. And by the way, that green therapy is a real deal too. So they have found that getting outside and being in nature, and we're so on our screens that it really does shift. They've done like brain scans, shift your brain state when you are outside. So again, so like, I don't know if you brought your favorite scent, but I have my little candle burning, and it's sun-drenched linen, and I love clean scents. When I surround myself with clean scents, it just immediately calms us down. And I'm just going to reiterate, why is that? Because the way that our body brings in information is through our senses. So anything you do that has to do with the senses, you are automatically turning on your parasympathetic nervous system. There's a nerve called the vagus nerve that goes from that brainstem all the way down to our pelvis. And that is the one that's talking to the amygdala. So that's why doing things with to address your body are just really important. I'm gonna erase. Okay, so this, we're not gonna go through this, but this is a little handout. It's also in your resources that just has some of those sensory things that might be helpful, even for your students. That might be something good. All right, so your mind, adjusting your mindset. This is a big one. That challenging the negative thoughts. If I picked any of these for you, I might say, let's avoid watching the news, okay? Because that's just like dumping in toxic stuff. Another one would be, let's challenge our negative thoughts and replace with positive truths. And what I mean by that is not the Pollyanna positives that aren't true and that our brains aren't going to believe when we tell ourselves. What I mean is a positive truth. So an example might be, man, like I just don't have any friends at all. So that must mean like people just don't like me. I think that people don't like me. So that might be a negative thought. How I would replace that with a positive truth is, I actually do have a couple friends, and so I know how to make friends. And so it's possible for me to have friends, and it might just take a little more time to make a new friend. And so that's just that little shift, right? That's not this like, I'm going to go out and I have 500 friends. It's just that little shift, but with that positive dynamic added onto it. So I'm going to challenge you to pick a few in this slide to add to your plan. I have in here to go to therapy. It's not because I'm a therapist, although I love being a therapist, but I go to therapy myself, and I find that one of the most beneficial things in my self-care plan this year especially has been I need a place where I can talk about things where I am not going to negatively impact anyone else. And it has just been a really, really important thing for me to be able to process things and know that I'm not going to ruin a relationship, or I'm not going to have to repair something because I hurt someone's feelings. I'm just really going to be able to deal with some of those things that are important. All right. Behavior. Find healthy ways to vent frustrations. In our field right now, in special ed, your field right now, boy, there is just so much. There's all these new laws coming down, or changing the IEPs all the time. We have to change how the goals are. And it's really easy to get in that space where we're like, can't believe what else just happened today. And that negative energy just kind of goes and goes and goes. And we just get stuck there. So I would challenge you to find healthy ways to vent your frustrations and surround yourself with people who encourage you rather than drain you. I made it a goal this year. I have a really good friend in the building, and I made it in my middle school building, and I made it a goal for myself not to go to her room and say, can you believe what just happened? And instead to go and say, this really good thing just happened, and kind of celebrate the successes. And it's been challenging, but it's been really good. Building in healthy routines. So what's a morning routine? You could just say every Monday or every Thursday, I'm going to do this. You could pair this with, I don't know where it was. Maybe it's on the next one. Nope, that's the need a nap. You could pair this with.
Though.
Oh, I know. I'm not going to click on it because I won't be able to get back to the presentation. But so there's, some people do Thankful Thursdays, and so gratitude is like a really great way to start to build in some of that nurture for yourself. And what's great about gratitude is that it's a double whammy. So you have, not only are you sharing something that is encouraging to someone else, but that you also benefit from that too. Someone I know is doing Thankful Thursdays and having students write a letter of gratitude. Victoria, I think you did this too. And those students send those little thank you notes to their teachers. Oh, it's like such a blessing. And so fun to do. One thing too, in this, I was reading about a teacher who was kind of tired of the toxic lunchroom scenario in the teacher's lounge. And so she brought in a puzzle and kind of like directed everyone just kind of jumped on to doing the puzzle, and it became a really good connecting thing. And maybe they stopped kind of biting about negative things during the day. So that's something to consider. We're going to skip the need a nap, but it was just one of those memes that was so funny. Okay, real quick on this. The key is dosing. So just like we take a daily medicine we would never think not to take our insulin if we're diabetic. We would never think not to, I am thyroid, I would never think not to take my thyroid medicine. I need that medicine every day to keep going. And so it's not just this side, it's this side. It's lots of little things, a little bit every day. All right. Where are we at time? Oh, we have 5 minutes.
So really quickly, the reason we have thrown this in there is Dr. Dan Siegel has a saying that if you can name it, you can tame it. So really just being able to recognize what are the different feelings and different emotions that you are experiencing. And then once you can name those, then you can problem solve through them and figure out what you can do in order to work through that. And so again, just another resource for you to have. And then Another grounding technique or mindfulness activity that you could do is, a lot of times we're feeling anxious, we're worried about something that could happen in the future, or we're replaying events that happened in the past. And so our brain is like constantly going, and it's constantly going different directions because our brains are created to problem solve, especially when we are in the executive state. We want to problem solve and do things. But when we get into that anxiety state and that emotional state, we can just constantly be like cycling through thoughts that keep us anxious and keep us stressed. So what you can do is a mindfulness activity where you can really turn your mind into focusing on what's going on in the present moment. And we're focusing on the present moment without judgment. And so this, I call like the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but it's really just looking around at 5 things you can see, and you don't make a judgment. You just say, like, I see a chair, I see a bottle, I see a tree. So name 5 things you can see, then 4 things you can feel, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and then 1 thing that you can taste. And so once you do that, a lot of times then you are just really, you've spent maybe a minute or 2 just really focused on the present moment, and you've given your brain a break from that anxiety or feeling overwhelmed with everything else that you were thinking about and focused on.
This actually really works, and I always use it in therapy, especially with anxious clients. All right, takeaways. So we talked about some triggers, healthy habits, the feelings wheel. So we have some things on the resources page. But what I want to address real quick is maybe you have some more intensive needs. Maybe you are feeling part of what is struggling for you is the systemic difficulties that you have, whether it's just specific to your district or your department, or maybe relationships you're having with colleagues. And that's really part of what's a trigger for you, or adding to your stress. And so I guess I would challenge you too, that part of self-care, aside from just the body, mind, behavior, is also finding ways to feel empowered, to use your voice. I think sometimes those things are alerting to us, like there's a real problem here, and I'm not sure what to do. But where can you approach someone, a colleague, or approach an administrator and say, hey, I want to brainstorm how can we address this, and what ways can I be part of that solution, and do some problem solving. And I think that just giving yourself permission to do something like that can be really empowering. We can't change everything. And there are definitely those things that we are out of our control and that we can't change. But there are some things that you could change, and some things maybe those in positions over you hadn't thought of before. And so the other takeaway is accountability. That's kind of a like naughty word sometimes, but really what it just means is that you're partnering with somebody. We are motivated to change behavior more when we're doing it with someone else. And so I just encourage you to find that person that you could be accountable to. All right, so here's big challenge. Identify at least one self-care goal that you will walk away with from today. And then here's our resources. Right here, I have a link. I tried to be so techie, and I put a link there for a worksheet for a self-care plan. So you can transfer some of your notes and the things that ideas you had about caring for yourself on that worksheet. And I guess I just want to close. Oh, and Victoria has some focused attention practices and mindfulness, and we have those little sheets that we talked about earlier. But I just want to say that you are so worth it. You are worth it. This is hard work that we do. This is life-changing work that we do, and we need you, and your kids need you. So
Well, Victoria and Jennifer, thank you so much for sharing all of this evening. It's great. And it was wonderful for me to take a moment to stop and slow down with everything happening. All of the resources that were shared, we will send out the PowerPoint with the links so you have those. There will also be a video of tonight's session that we will have on our YouTube channel, and that will be emailed out. I hope you're seeing the correct screen. We have some upcoming sessions. Writing Quality Annual Goals is on April 11th, and that's with the Indiana Secondary Transition Resource Center. Indiana IEP Technical Assistance Center will be with us on May 9th and June 13th to talk about behavior plans and manifestation determinations. And then in order to receive a certificate, a PGP certificate for this evening's presentation and your attendance, please make sure that you scan this QR code, or I will put the link in the chat and go ahead and fill it out. Otherwise, I don't know who to get certificates to after this session is over. So thanks everyone. We'll hang on for a minute so you can capture that QR code or click the link. But again, Victoria and Jennifer, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Todd, they're saying the QR code doesn't work.
Well, oh yeah, you're gonna have to click on the link in the chat. I'm sorry. Let me put it in again. I apologize. I did just receive a notice my free account stopped. That's why.
Okay.
Oops. I think I sent it just to someone.
Okay, it's in the chat now. Maria wants to know if she can put in her personal email.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
That QR code should work now. If you need a QR code. All right, well, thanks everyone. We're gonna go ahead and shut down the meeting. Reach out if you need anything.
Okay, thank you.
Tracy, I'll see you later.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Good night,
Bye.
everybody.